And global affairs analyst Calvin Dack joins me for more on this. Good to have you join us, Calvin Dack. Now, what do you make of the first night of the Republican National Convention in terms of diversity and messaging?
Well, I think on the diversity question, it was quite clear that the Republican Party wants to demonstrate that they at least want the future of the party to be more inclusive with more people like Nikki Haley and Tim Scott. Now, if their policies and practices actually help that come to pass, that's something that they really didn't say how they were going to be able to do that.
So Republicans also promised that the convention will focus more on policies and not character, as we saw in the Democratic National Convention. So did the convention meet that expectation?
Not really, because if you look at what Donald Trump said and what was said on his behalf, they definitely put forth their ideals about what the president's view of law and order is, and security, and safe neighborhoods, and cancel culture, and all of these things. Now, when it comes to policies as to how they would actually legislate that to get to that ideal, they were very unclear. But once again, that is a reflection of how Donald Trump has influenced the Republican Party, because he has never been one with actual policy recommendations, just his idea of what America should be.
So we got a really fantastic statement coming from someone like Nikki Haley, who is somewhat of a beloved figure. When she said that she's a brown girl, she grew up a brown girl in a black and white world, and someone like Tim Scott talking about how he moved from cotton to Congress. But we also had people like Mark and Patricia McCloskey, the St. Louis couple who pointed guns at Black Lives Matter protesters. Was that a hit or miss for the convention, especially at a time where we're seeing the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I think from Trump and the Republican point of view, it was a hit, because I don't think they really understand consistency in messaging when it comes to diversity. Look, I'm a black person, a proud black person in the U.S. Tim Scott is as well, and Nikki Haley, a proud brown woman, as she said. But for them to look at me last night and say that that this country does not have its racist elements, and that, all of the things that the Democrats have talked about to promote Black Lives Matter, to kind of solve our racial issues, are simply manipulation, that black people are just used to voting Democrat. I don't agree with it, but they have just as much a right to hold that position as minorities in this country as I do. But what I think that the St. Louis couple shows is that where the party really is, and where Donald Trump's idea really is about racial justice in this country, are well-to-do white couples who can pull out arms and point them at Black Lives Matter protesters who are peaceful, and that's not only okay, but should be rewarded with a spot at the National Republican Convention.
But this is for his base, though, and we saw that sort of rhetoric in 2016. Do you think that Donald Trump continues to appeal to that base, and maybe not the general, America?
I definitely think that the one thing about Trump's base that I do think is unprecedented, or at least historic in our country, is that it remains strong. Now, it also remains around or less than 40%. So what's going to matter is how many people who are coming out to vote, who are kind of in the middle, who are kind of considering where they want to go. If the rhetoric, if the kind of ignorance about what race and racism in this country is, if that's going to be a deal breaker. And just to let you know, one of the things that Tim Scott said that kind of give you an insight into where a lot of Americans are speaking, notice how he said what Donald Trump had done for black and brown people was in terms of economics, because the Republican message seems to be that if we just provide the whole country with economic growth, then that will somehow solve racial problems that they don't agree even exist.
Whilst we know that Joe Biden has picked Kamala Harris as his running mate, and some people think that might address the racial tension at this moment, but Joe Biden is now maintaining an 8% lead over President Trump in the polls. Now, some weeks ago, it was about 12%. And does this reflect the current mood in the country?
Well, I think that my personal opinion about what's being reflected in the polls is what happens every election year, that it doesn't really get real for a lot of people until we have the conventions where people realize that the election is 70 so days away, where people are now doing what I did, requesting my mail-in ballot. So I think when it gets real, it requires a lot of those people in the middle or undecided to get closer to the decision they're going to make. So the race tightening actually makes sense at this time.
So there are independents and there are also Republicans who don't like President Trump, but want to continue to support the conservative agenda. What will it take to get those kind of people, whether independents or Republicans, by both sides of the aisle?
That's going to be a difficult one, because one of the things that I was surprised at was Nikki Haley, who, most people believe that she has high aspirations for her own political offices she wants to seek in 2024. I was interested to see, how much is she going to associate herself with the Republican Party as a whole or with Donald Trump. And she went for the latter. And I just remember thinking that with some Republicans and some independents that are Republican but don't believe that Donald Trump has the credibility they want, the fact that she tied herself so closely to him is going to affect her image in their minds. And hey, if the base continues to grow for Donald Trump and if he is successful for re-election, that might be a benefit to her.
We'll see how that plays out. Global Affairs analyst Calvin Dack, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.